again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Raw Reaction series, the show in which we react to the latest news, matches, Arsenal fixtures, everything possible as soon as possible. And today is slightly different, covering a little bit of controversial news that came out yesterday. Of course, yesterday Arsenal beat Burnley 2-1. You can still go check out the Raw Reactions episode of where I break down my thoughts immediately after the conclusion of that game. And of course, tonight, if you're watching Sunday when this is released, on Sunday, UK time, at 9 p.m, I'll be joined by John from Miami and Webby, Matt Webb, tonight for our Gooner Talk podcast. So you can join us three to have a chat about the weekend's events, the last news, talk about what we're going to talk about today in this video as well. So plenty of us to talk about. Live chat will be going live. So if you want to make sure that you are tuning into our live chats, please make sure that you click that subscribe button and turn those notifications on, because that's how I know that you're going to be tuning in for those live chats. And of course, please give it a like if you're enjoying it. But let's get straight into today's video and talk about what we're here to talk about, which is some really strange news about Robin van Persie, who was a pundit yesterday on BT Sport, who were covering the game of Arsenal against Burnley. And before the game went, obviously, Jake Humphries presenting it, was given the opportunity to speak to RVP and was basically doing a really good job journalistically, because he asked questions to RVP, which I'm sure plenty of Arsenal fans want to know the answers to, and that's what the best journalists do. And he did that, and RVP came out with some very, very odd statements, and we're going to go through some of them. Before we do, let's say hello to the live chat. Thank you ever so much who is tuning in today. Let's see what we've got. We've got Opora and Philip, who says, what did I just hear? Who on earth could believe Wenger never offered RVP a contract at the peak of his prime career? This podcast will be really near explosive. I can't wait to have a feel of it. Phil Hulk says that I think RVP meant they didn't offer him enough money. Soto is very happy with Arsenal at the moment. And South London's Finest B says, why is it I'm seeing people saying Pepe is a waste of money? Is the Ivorian Theo Walcott? Maybe we'll have a chance to talk about that at the end. And Kurt Walter says that RVP seemed honest. I think there's a lot of things we need to talk about. I'm going to share with you on the screen now the story, which comes obviously on Football London, but obviously the story was broken on BT Sport. But this gives sort of a rundown of what was said by the ex-Manchester United and Arsenal striker. So if we have a look at what he says, the fact is Arsenal didn't offer me a deal. What do you do then? So what do you do effectively? You have a look around. I was ambitious. I still wanted to win the league, and that is life. Basically, I ended up having three options. One option abroad disappeared quickly, so it was City or United. What people don't know during a transfer or a marriage is behind the scenes, there are a lot of things that fans don't see. Loads of things are happening. You have to make a choice based on what your targets are and deal with the facts. One of the main issues or facts is that possibly Arsenal got tired of me for whatever reason. That was the starting point. They didn't offer me a new deal. Now, I want to start with his comments basically saying that the fact is that Arsenal didn't offer me a deal, which is a very strange thing to say, especially when we look at what was said 7 years ago. And we can do that because we can look at the article that was published by the BBC when that happened, saying that RVP will not sign a new contract at Arsenal. That's what he said. I thought he said 7 years ago, in which by 2012 back then, wasn't it? Think about my maths very quickly. I've thought long and hard about it, but I have decided not to extend my contract to the Dutchman at the club since 2004. Right on his website, on his own personal website, that's what he said. And Arsenal responded with a statement to that, saying, we have to respect Robin's decision not to renew his contract. Robin has 1 year to run on his current contract, and we are confident that he will fulfill his commitments to the club. We are planning with ambition and confidence for next season with Arsenal's best interests in mind. Now, when you look at the two, they're very conflicting statements, it's fair to say. You've got one side, which is obviously the most recent statement from RVP, saying that they never offered him a deal. And then you've got him saying 7 years ago that he has chosen not to extend his deal, which would imply that a deal was put on the table for the Dutchman. Where do I stand on this before we get your views? My view is that I think that RVP is right in the sense that a lot goes on in football that we never hear about. A lot has to go on behind the scenes that we're never really going to hear about until something like this happens, where he's retired, he's not under contract of anyone, he's not got any loyalties to anyone, and he can say what he likes. And he said later on in the interview that it's an opportunity for him to say that time heals all and it's time to reveal the truth, sort of thing. Now, that's all well and good, but that does obviously conflict with the statement that came out 7 years ago on his own personal website. And that's when I tweeted out saying that maybe he's enlightening us to the truth. A lot of people weren't very happy with that tweet, and I can understand why. People were saying that effectively RVP is lying because it suits him, and that he's already come out and said 7 years ago that it was on his personal website, and that's what happened. That he was offered a deal and he turned it down because of money. A lot of people highlight the fact that he wanted to move because of money. I don't think money was the driving factor. I think that he was very frustrated with the situation at Arsenal, how they weren't going to be doing what he necessarily wanted. And I don't think the club should be based around one player, don't get me wrong, but I was all for Arsenal trying to invest and trying to be ambitious. And apparently Arsenal weren't ambitious enough for him, and that's why he went to Manchester United. Now, the issue a lot of fans and myself have is that he went to Manchester United, which is obviously a huge rival of Arsenal, left Arsenal in a really difficult situation. And also, the statement that came out on the Arsenal website is that he has a year left on his deal, and we know that he will fulfill the rest. So that's what it says on the actual thing. We said that we have to respect Robin's decision not to renew his contract, and Robin has 1 year left to run, and we are confident that he will fulfill the commitments to the club. Now, we know that never happened because, of course, he left for Manchester United in a £24 million deal. And it was one of those classic Nasri Fabregas things where Wenger came out and said they're going to stay, and then they didn't. So the question is RVP lying and saying that we never offered him a deal when in fact we did, and he's saying that to try and sort of sweeten the blow to us 7 years later? Or did Wenger and Gazidis and the club ultimately lie by saying that, or effectively saying or implying that they had offered him a contract and he'd turned it down effectively for money and to join Manchester United to win the league? I have seen what's happened over the last 18 months, not even that, 14 months at Arsenal, with Raul Sanllehi coming in, Unai Emery taking over from Arsene Wenger, Gazidis leaving, Sven Mislintat coming and going, Edu coming in. A real structure being built at Arsenal. And I've seen that happen over the last, as I say, just over a year or so. And that's what leans me to believe slightly on the Dutchman side, that there may be some truth in it, because we've seen the progress the club has made and the openness, and I have to be surprised at the openness that the club has had, even with the Conkeys coming out and Josh in particular, of course. And there was a lot of stuff that went behind the scenes at Arsenal during Wenger and Gazidis' tenure that we never, and we might never ever know about. And this could be one of those instances that actually we weren't told the whole truth about. And in fact, it wasn't down to, we never actually even offered him a deal, which is strange considering he was our best player at the time, scoring a ridiculous amount of goals. But I find it really tricky to sort of see that this is just a complete lie, because it doesn't make any sense just to say, why come out here all of a sudden just say that? Why just bring that out of the blue? Obviously, he was asked about it, but it was much easier to just continue it. He's never going to rebuild that relationship with those Arsenal fans. That is dead, and you can tell that from the reaction to what he said. But to come out and maybe it's because he's frustrated and he's sick and tired of people misconstruing it, or maybe it's because he wants to clear his name. Whatever the reason, he has said it, and I think that there must be some sort of truth in it. Maybe it's just because I'm, as long-time listeners will know, the biggest optimist in the world, and far from being a pessimistic person. But I just think that I don't know why he would say it for no reason. Now, let's get some of your comments from the chat box. Of course, this is why we do these shows, is to get your thoughts. Kurt Walters says, why would RVP lie at this stage after his career? There must be something to what he is saying, and that's sort of what I'm saying. But JFH says that RVP is so shameless that he simply doesn't care, which I can also believe in some parts. Sharad says the reality was he had the best season of his career at Arsenal before he left, and he didn't know how long it would last. He saw an opportunity to win the title with United, and he took it. Now, something that I take from comments like this is, which is a completely fair comment, by the way, is that sometimes I think Arsenal fans get a little bit bogged down in that when you play for Arsenal, you should be this 100% committed. And during the time at the club, 100% think you should be. You should be 100% committed to the club at all times. You're an employee, you're getting paid by them, you work for them. But at the same time, they aren't fans like we are. They're not a fan like you or me who will die for this club and loves this club to your very core. They're not like that. And that's why I think a lot of the reaction to Aaron Ramsey leaving was slightly unfair. Because whilst he's been here since very young, he's not an Arsenal diehard fan. He's Welsh, and as far as I'm aware, I think he's a Cardiff fan. So I don't think that he is in any way um, saying that he's going against his rights and Arsenal. It's not like you or me leaving Arsenal for Manchester United. This is a Dutch guy that came to the country from Feyenoord when he was young, was built up by Arsenal and trained by Arsenal. And this whole thing about when people say the club he owes the club something because we made him. I don't really buy into the made him comment because you're in charge of your own destiny as an employee, as a worker in football, in finance, in teaching, in whatever. You get out what you put in, and I'm sure RVP worked extremely hard to get to the level that he's at, and he doesn't owe Arsenal anything. He had to work hard to get to the position he's in. I still don't like what he did, leaving for Manchester United, but that's the only part of it I don't really like. I appreciate a lot of what he did, but ultimately it seems that Arsenal were the ones that had the final chance to offer him a new deal, and they didn't. Which is really, and this, at the end of the day, this is just purely opinions, and this is just my opinion, and I'm glad we can have the discussion. Lasker says there that I'm sorry, but I'll never ever trust that fraud Gazidis. He took over and made us a laughing stock. And I think that I put Gazidis in this because, of course, there was a statement that came out from the club, and obviously Gazidis and Wenger would have both had huge say in the statement that went out and sort of the image that Arsenal portrayed of during the difficult time of his departure. And that's why I put Gazidis in this, because we've seen such a change since Gazidis has gone, and the proactiveness of Raul Sanllehi and Edu and Husfami and all the people in the backroom staff, and even Josh Kroenke to a certain extent, of course, who I think has changed a lot of people's minds about him. Obviously, he was at the games, Josh Kroenke, yesterday. He was at Burnley, and clearly has got an investment in this club that he cares about, which is great, a great turnaround. But I have a huge gripe with Gazidis personally because I just don't think he did his job extremely well. And I think the fact that he sent off Wenger and brought in Unai Emery and basically tried to take all the credit for it when ultimately it's Unai Emery who's come in, he's pitched himself and he's earned the right to become Arsenal manager. Gazidis just basically said yes or no, along with advice from Raul Sanllehi and Sven Mislintat, who were there along the way, and obviously Raul is still here now. But I just think that you can't trust that you can't trust Gazidis as much as that a lot of people may thought we could have in the past, because he went off to AC Milan as soon as Wenger's gone, and as soon as Emery's come in, Gazidis went. Like he wasn't here to sort of see the Passover, and that's why linking back to the Robin van Persie thing is that I can't trust the statement that the club put out during that time, because there's so much secrecy and so many conflicting reports that came out of Arsenal during that pair's tenure that's why there could necessarily be some credence to what RVP is saying. Abdul says that RVP is 200% lying, which is fair enough. Again, this is all opinions, boys and girls, so I'm happy for you to say what you feel. Get the likes up, everyone says Unique. Of course, if you are enjoying this sort of debate discussion, please do get those likes up. Kurt Walter says that our management over the last 10 years have been all about the money. Why can't we see this? Now, if it's about money, we made 24 million-ish, approximately, off the sale of Van Persie. And we saved, of course, any increase in his wages that he particularly wanted. But we never, supposedly, if you to believe what he says, we never we never offered him a deal. We never offered him a contract. So we were all about money grabbing, as people like to call it. But and maybe that's what it was. Obviously, we brought in Olivier Giroud and Lucas Podolski on decent wages. They never really replaced the goal threat that RVP brought in. But I think a lot of people like Giroud and like Podolski as well for their commitment to the club and what they did. A lot of people don't really like Giroud now after what he did, moving to Chelsea and then the things that he said after the Europa League final win. But I think that a lot of people liked him during his tenure. I certainly did. But they never really replicated what RVP had. And it's not until we brought in Lacazette and Aubameyang that we really replaced Van Persie at the club. And now we are seeing a huge reliance once again. If you think about it, when RVP was the club, again, we had a huge reliance in goals from him. He left. We brought in Podolski, Santi Cazorla, Olivier Giroud, then Mesut Ozil, and we gradually started to rely on goals from different areas of the pitch, but not really from a striking position. Obviously, Theo Walcott had a big hand in them as well. Aaron Ramsey chipped in with goals in that fantastic season that he had, which obviously culminated in winning the FA Cup. And then we signed Lacazette, and in the following January, we signed, and obviously before that, we signed Alexis Sanchez, who also scored a lot of goals. And the following January, after we signed Lacazette, we signed Aubameyang. And that's when we finally sort of replaced Robin van Persie. And now it seems from the start of this season, you're seeing Aubameyang score the only goal against Newcastle, Aubameyang, Lacazette scoring yesterday against Burnley. Again, it seems like we're relying a lot on our strikers to score the goals, which is I'm completely fine with, because I think if you have a situation where you've got a striker scoring 30, 40, 50 goals a season, or a pair of strikers scoring 30 or 40 goals between them, you do take goals away from other areas of the pitch, and other areas of the pitch begin to focus on creation rather than goal scoring. Whereas before it was about sharing the load between the squads, and now it's completely different. I know where I'm going off on a huge tangent here, but it's just trying to understand the journey that we went on from RVP leaving to the point that we are now, and now seeing the comments coming out from RVP like he did yesterday. Gunnar Smasher said that Giroud would have stayed if we gave him the games RVP wanted to go to United. Ringley says that I believe RVP. He has no reason to lie now, and unless we get a statement from Wenger, we have no reason to doubt him. Well, I highly doubt we'll ever get sort of a statement or a reply from Wenger. He's not the type of person to get into these politics. If there's a journalist out there who gets a chance to speak to him on beIN Sports, if he's still there, I don't know, then maybe we'll get the chance. But it'd be interesting. And if there is anyone with the opportunity, the chance to speak to Arsene Wenger on camera, I think it's fair play. Go out and ask that question, because it's certainly something that we need an answer to. Paul Alves says that as for Wenger and Gaz, there's the reason we are so far off City and Co in first place. I think that I don't think it's solely down to them. I think the finances do come into it for sure, but I think the way that we managed ourselves as a club, and the management of the players and the management of the finances in the last half decade or so, has caused us to drop away when we could have necessarily improved on that. I think we've seen with Raul Sanllehi and Edu, and to a smaller extent, Sven Mislintat, and of course Emery himself, we've seen a much more proactive, a much more smart and sophisticated way of dealing with transfers in more of a modern fashion, with structured deals in a certain way that works with our budget, selling players like Christian Bielik, Alex Iwobi for very, very good fees, whereas in the past we sold players for cut price deals, and financially that just wasn't viable. The fraud Gazidis couldn't wait to jump the ship himself and sunk. Good riddance, says Emilio. Fair enough. Let's see what other people are saying. Avon Teddington says Wenger and Gazidis gave huge contracts to medico players to keep them at Arsenal. Mediocre players, I think he means. Players to keep them at Arsenal. I think in part driven by losing players to direct rivals. We are still stuck with some. Of course, we've sold a fair few players to rivals over the years. Alexis Sanchez, Oxlade-Chamberlain, even going to Liverpool even in more recent times, and obviously in the past, RVP, Fabregas, Nasri, Adebayor, Kolo Touré, Gael Clichy, all these players come into mind. But now we're definitely being more proactive in the market. We're signing players, British players as well, with Kieran Tierney, obviously Rob Holding and Chambers more recently as well, which even under Wenger, you've got to give them credit for those deals. I mean, Rob Holding cost less than $2 million, I think, from Bolton. And it's important that you keep those young British players in the team, 100%, and it needs to be continually brought through. And we're seeing youngsters like Willock and Nelson brought through the youth ranks and into the team as well, which is absolutely fantastic. Unique's got a question. He says, with your knowledge of the Spanish league, what is the possibility of us buying Ceballos after his loan spell? No matter my knowledge of the Spanish league, I don't know whether or not we would be able to get a deal done for Ceballos. Of course, Real Madrid are very well stocked in midfield. However, they're well stocked with players that are aging. Modric and Kroos are not getting any younger. Neither Casemiro's sort of in the later part of his 20s, I believe, as well. So they are going to want to bring in youthful players. That's the reason they signed Ceballos and Asensio and these type of players in the past, and they signed very young players like Vinicius as well. So whether or not we can buy him, I don't know. Zidane and him don't particularly get on, which is a positive for us. So fingers crossed. I have a huge worry, though, that if he has a fantastic season, there's nothing to stop the likes of Man City or Liverpool, possibly with greater financial power, and even Chelsea next season with their financial power coming in and throwing big money at Ceballos if he proves to be a really big player this season for Arsenal. There's no obligation or option or alliance or loyalty that he has to have to the club, and you can't blame him for that. That's just how life works. Archie says Zidane doesn't want youthful players; he wants Pogba. I don't agree with that. I think that he's shown in the past in the transfer business he did in his first stint that he does want youthful players and he does want to bring through young players. And they've done that this season with the players they brought in as well from Brazil, and with Vinicius Junior coming in previously, and under his tenure, Ceballos coming in as well. I think they've gone, and Ferland Mendy as well from Lyon, of course, who's another young, fantastic French left back. So I wouldn't say that he doesn't want youthful players. I think that he wants to bring youth and world class talent in the likes of Eriksen and Pogba as well. South London's Finest Beast says, why are people calling Pepe the Ivorian Theo Walcott and that he's a waste of money? Why are people doing it? I don't know because I don't know because we've not seen enough of him. I thought he was very bright when he came on. He tried really hard to do stuff. I said on the show yesterday, please do, of course, go check out the show we did, the Raw Reaction show of the Burnley game. But I think in terms of Pepe, you saw Ceballos' performance against Newcastle in Pepe yesterday, a player that came on, like Ceballos did, really wanted to sort of force it a bit and show what he could do. Didn't really get it enough. And if he just put a little bit more weight on that pass to Aubameyang, he could have got an assist in his first home debut. So that would have been great. But he couldn't do it. But hopefully against Liverpool, he will start and be a real weapon for us throughout the season. Tom, what are the rumours about Jovic not even being a starter? He's not a starter at the moment. Benzema's doing really well for Real Madrid and has done last season. Jovic came in as sort of a talent. They spotted what he was really good at Frankfurt last season and on loan from Benfica, and they decided to go for him. And he's not a starter at the moment because he's just not ahead of Benzema. I'm not sure I believe the rumours about what's his face Zidane not liking him, but he could go out on loan still. The window is still open, so who knows? But I think he's a fantastic talent. I think it's just going to take time for him to adapt. We've gone off on a huge tangent, so let's end on a relatable comment from Sharad, who says, you ever get the feeling maybe Wenger wanted RVP to see out his contract, but Gazidis didn't and wanted some money for him. So RVP did the statement to cover Wenger's back from fan abuse. I'm not sure. I think that's a long way into what it was. I think you're thinking way too hard into it. I don't think he did it to protect Wenger. My personal opinion is I think he did it because he was a bit sick and tired of what is clearly, in his opinion, the fake stories that were going around and the stick that he's got from Arsenal fans, which isn't going to stop, of course, and nothing will stop that because of what he went to Manchester United. So what can you expect? But at the same time, I think he was a bit sick and tired of the falsehoods that he believes went on, that we offered him a deal when we didn't, and Arsenal never pursued a deal with Robin van Persie. So that's fair enough. We're going to end things there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Of course, we've got a podcast later on this evening with Webby and with John at 9 o'clock UK time. So please, if you haven't already, turn those notifications on and you'll get notified immediately so we can go live. So if you're watching a replay and you're wondering, why do I never get to tune into these live chats and get my comments on the screen like Sharad did there? Then, of course, you can tune in live to our podcast by turning those notifications on. You'll get a little notification through to your phone, fingers crossed. That will happen, and you can join in our live chat on the YouTube app. You just need the YouTube app, and you will be able to join in with our live chat. Of course, you can tune in on your PC as well, or laptop, or Mac if you use one of those. And I hope that's all right. In terms of the camera, backup camera at the moment, I'm trying to sort. I hope the feed's been okay, and not too grainy or whatever. I hope it's been all right for you guys. But that's going to wrap us up. So thank you ever so much for tuning in, people. I'll see you again very, very soon this evening. And, of course, go check out all the shows we've done in the week. Tactical Breakdown will be out on Monday or Tuesday with Graham and Drew. But until that time, keep it real, keep it Arsenal, and I'll see you again very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.